Hi there, I'm going to show you the new slider and range slider control plus a few additional new features of OpenText Gupta TD Mobile 2.1. First, let me run this application so you get an idea of what the slider and range slider control do mean. So you have the start screen of the app, and I can touch on this by amount button. And then I have the slider control where I can use the touch input to create a numeric value, or have the user enter a numeric input value. And as I move the slider here, the database results are updated immediately. So you see that the amount of rows increases the smaller the value here becomes. And you also see that I'm using colored text that depends on the status of the payment here. So easy input for one single numeric value here, but also for a range of values. You can have a minimum and a maximum value and use touch input to modify this range, which is now between 500 and 7,000. And the smaller I will make that here, the more different color rows show up. So you see another important new feature of TD Mobile 2.1, which is colored output depending on formulas, which is colored output that nicely displays values and gives hints about the content of the data. So let's check the application source code itself. If I go to the invoice by amount screen, you see there's the slider control is defined here, and there's a maximum value and a minimum value. Range slider is not enabled, and you have a single value bind that will then contain the user selected value. If you change to the other screen, there you see the range slider, which has a minimum and maximum value as well, but it has a lower value bind and an upper value bind that enable you to retrieve the minimum and the maximum value that the user has entered via touch input. Now let's look at the code here. This is kind of interesting. First, go to the invoice by amount. There's a slider control. If we look at the contents and the slider, then there's a new event on change. When the slider values change, we are invoking this get invoices operation, which retrieves the amount of values from the database that match this select criteria. So the filter here, filter field, and you see greater than invoice filter. So that's how you code the slider. Now in the range slider, you can do the same basically, but you can also use another new feature of TD Mobile, which are events of bindings. And we do have a binding here for the invoice filter high value, and the binding itself now can have an onChanged event and can then invoke the get invoices operation. And the same is true for the invoice filter low, which then invokes the get invoice operation here. So you see the new feature of having events on bindings. You did also see that the data was displayed in colors, and let me show you how you do that. You select a value that should be applied color mappings to. In properties, select edit color mappings, and then you can define JavaScript expressions and assign the expression a color. That's what I've done here. So there are this will use orange for the status for this column. Based on the status column, you get orange if the status is late, red if the status is open, and green if the status is paid. So nice and simple color-based output based on formulas. So TD Mobile 2.1 enhances the user interaction by allowing touch input for numeric values with the slider control, and the range slider control has new events for bindings, which eases coding for the developer and allows to display data in different colors depending on formulas on the data. Download TD Mobile 2.1 from the OpenText website now to try all this yourself.